Thank you for joining us for week 28. And we are very excited. This week, we are talking about empathy versus pity. And I do think that this is going to conclude our healing sessions. So we're going to end it off talking about empathy versus pity, or empathy versus sympathy. What's the difference? So lesson 28, I'll read that. Again, Jesus talks about vision. The lesson 28 in A Course in Miracles says, above all else, I want to see things differently. Above all else, I want to see things differently. So in this lesson, Jesus is inviting us to see things with a new perspective, not with the lens of the past. You're asking everyone and everything you see what it is, rather than telling everyone and everything you see what it is. So seeing something or seeing someone, making an assumption, telling them what they are, to see things differently. The decision, the intention of seeing things differently allows you to let them tell you who they are and what they are and what their divine purpose is. And to see everything with a completely different mind, open mind. And next week, we will be delving into this much more, having this discussion about having true vision. Jesus talks about this. There's so many lessons in A Course in Miracles that deals with seeing things differently, having true vision. He really hammers that in because it really is important. Because if we allow ourselves to open our minds, right, and to have true vision, if we see things more clearer, we open our whole world up to broaden our perspective. So I'm excited. I'm excited about that. So I have a question, everybody. I have a question. Have you ever been going through something and you have had someone come up to you, like say you're going through something challenging in your life? And so you have you ever had somebody come up to you and say, oh, man, I feel so bad for you. I feel awful. Oh, you must feel so horrible. I feel so bad for you. Or have you ever heard someone say to another person, like say at work, and you're hearing them talking about you and they're like, poor so-and-so, they broke their ankle, or they got into a car accident, or they lost a family member, or whatever. And I feel so sorry for her. I feel so bad for him. How did that make you feel to have someone tell you that? Does anybody have any like language about how do you feel when somebody expresses their sympathy in that way?
I can share. I mean, it doesn't feel good. It reduces you in a way. Yeah. I mean, you're already going through something and you want to feel empowered and supported.
Yes.
So for me to avoid that experience, when I'm going through something, I don't usually share it until I've already been through it and say, hey, here's what I went through, but hold on, it's been solved. Yeah. And that's how I handle that. So yeah.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And as a matter of fact, that's the point I was going to make. So having somebody do that, or even to share with somebody that you're going through something and they get so upset that you find yourself consoling them. It's like, wait a minute, what happened? What happened to this equation where they're so upset, or they start crying, or they react in such an exaggerated way that you're like patting their back and you're telling them it's going to be all right. So we all know from our feelings that this is not a healthy expression of empathy. This is just something is wrong with this. In fact, like Khadijah said, expressing that we feel so bad for another is one of the most diminishing things that we do to each other. It really is. These statements do not raise anyone's vibration. Quite the contrary, they are a joining of some form of poverty. The person that is in the challenging situation and the person who is trying to support them both are in this form of poverty together. They do not encourage or inspire neither person. No one wins in that dialogue. And in fact, the person who is going through the situation often wishes that people would just leave them alone. Like, I wish they would just leave. Like, I hate everybody know this because now I got to deal on top of dealing with my challenge, my traumatic event. Now I have to deal with people constantly coming to me, taking something from me. And as Khadija said, that's why often when people are going through things, they are reluctant to tell others because they don't want to have to deal with others seeing them in this diminishing way. This exchange lowers their vibration even lower. And it's almost like it almost feels like an energetic curse, you know, to have that on you, you know, for someone to share their pity for you to that degree. You know, I feel so bad for you. It's like an energetic curse that you feel like you gotta shake off after that person walks away. It is one of the worst things that we do to one another in ignorance. It really is. And I use the word ignorance because well-intentioned people, right? We're all very well-intentioned. They do this thinking they are being supportive, thinking they're actually doing something right. We've been conditioned to believe that when others are going through very difficult situations or challenges, that they become a victim of those life circumstances. This is not true. As we all know, none of us are victims. These challenges, if we allow them, open up portals for new perspectives and new experiences if we let the light in. There is a YouTube channel that I follow. It's not very many that I follow, but there's a YouTube channel that I follow called Channeling Eric. And Eric is spelled with a K and not a C. And I don't know if everyone has heard of it, but I'll put the link in the description box. But this is a woman who has a son who committed suicide in 2009, and he was young. He was either 19 or 20, like very young. He committed suicide, and she was absolutely devastated and grief stricken, as any mother would be in that situation. She was so devastated that out of desperation to talk to her son, she began to reach out to different mediums to connect with him so that she could talk to him. Now, prior to this, she didn't really believe in all that stuff. But usually when people go through things, they don't have the luxury of being closed-minded anymore, right? They're now open to a different perspective, a different experience, just like what Jesus was talking about in terms of our vision, expanding our mind. So she started out, so she would find these mediums, and she started out by asking him all kinds of questions like, what was the first thing you saw when you crossed over? Or did you see God? Did you think you were going to hell? Did you have a life review? And he answered each question in his own words through the medium. Now, when I say in his own words, her son loves the F word, okay? And that was no different in spirit. Like he loved the cuss. And many times the mediums would be like, Eric, I'm not saying, you got to find a different word. I'm not saying that. But his mother knew that that was her son because she knew that that's the way he talked. So, but eventually, both this woman, her name is Elisa Medhus, and her son over the years began to evolve and grow. And her questions became more and more evolved, and his answers began to expand as well. So, through the mediums, she started asking him to bring in other beings who had crossed over to interview them, like they've interviewed Jesus, all kinds of famous people, everybody from Martin Luther King Jr. to Kobe Bryant to Nipsey Hussle to Hitler to extraterrestrials, everybody she could think of in her community got larger and larger, where they would say, say, I need you to interview this person. I need you to bring in, I want to ask this famous person questions. And so when she would have him bring these beings in, she would ask them questions about their life. What did they learn in their lifetime? What are they doing? What are you doing on the other side? What did you have to teach? Those kinds of questions. What past life influenced this last life you live? I mean, just great questions. And now, with over 74,000 followers, y'all, she has actually began to explore healing work herself. So now she's a doctor in the medical field, but she began to get into healing work herself. And so with her son, she has created this incredible life's work, y'all, on YouTube. Just this incredible presence where people will call in and want to speak with their loved ones, or what is my spirit guide's name, or just anything. And she's built this life with her son of service. And though you can tell that she severely misses her son, they together have literally transformed a tragedy into a blessing for themselves and others. So, so we're going to continue this conversation about true empathy. This is important to discuss because everyone who is studying a course in miracles, everyone who is studying a course in miracles are light workers. And you are here to continue to raise your vibration and continue to shine your light. And as you raise your vibration, as you clarify your mind, people will gravitate to you more and more. It's energetic. It's nothing that you have to say. They're just going to gravitate to you. They're going to feel it on a spiritual level. And it's like standing on a hill with the light shining for others to see and perceive. And the people will see your brilliant light more and more. And so it is important for us that when people come to us, if they come in poverty, right, that we bless them with gifts, that we do not further share in that position of impoverishment with them, that we're able to see in them what they cannot see. So we're going to start in A Course in Miracles, chapter 16. Jesus actually camps out on this concept of empathy because it's that important. So it's chapter 16 on page 330. And the chapter is called True Empathy. So I'm going to read paragraph 1. And it says, to empathize does not mean This is very important, y'all. It says to empathize does not mean to join in the suffering, for that is what you must refuse to understand. That is the ego's interpretation of empathy, and is always used to form a special relationship in which the suffering is shared. Um, the capacity to empathize is very useful to the Holy Spirit, provided you let Him use it in His way. His way is very different. Jesus is saying the Holy Spirit's way of empathizing is very different than the ego's way. He does not understand suffering, and would have you teach it is not understandable. When he relates through you, he does not relate through your ego to another ego. He does not join in pain, understanding that healing pain is not accomplished by delusional attempts to enter into it and lighten it by sharing the delusion. So basically, Jesus is saying that through the Holy Spirit, we do not join in suffering with another person. And that the ego would think that what you do is you join in the suffering and you share their delusional perceptions of themselves, right? That these beings are victims or less than. He says that the Holy Spirit does not recognize that, and that is not true empathy. Jesus states that to empathize is not to join in that. We will not participate in that. And that the Holy Spirit understands that healing is not accomplished by delusional attempts to enter into it. So so this is very important. This is kind of like what I was talking about when you share something about you and a person that you're talking about gets so upset that you have to like, yeah, it's so I'm good. It's okay. I'm good. That shouldn't happen. That's somebody joining into that in that situation with you. So in paragraph 2, Jesus says the ego is selective about what it wants to empathize with, and that the ego always empathizes to weaken, and to weaken is always to attack. He also says, you do not know what empathizing means, yet of this you may be sure. If you merely sit quietly by, if you merely sit quietly by and let the Holy Spirit relate through you, you will empathize with strength and will gain in strength and not in weakness. So pretty much Jesus is saying, just let the Holy Spirit do what the Holy Spirit is going to do. Just sit quietly by, and that empathy will come through you. It's not in the head space. It's usually in the heart space. And in paragraph 3, Jesus says, do not use empathy to make the past real and so perpetuate it. He says, step gently aside and let healing be done for you. He says, we simply do not need to interfere with the healing process. And this is so releasing to read and understand, that we don't have to worry about how to be there for others, that if we simply move ourselves to the side, the healing process will be done for us. And I love that, because it takes the pressure off us to try to figure it out. A Course in Miracles, page 306, in paragraph 1, it says, do not be content with littleness, but be sure you understand what littleness is and why you could never be content with it. Littleness is the offering you give yourself. You offer this in place of magnitude and you accept it. Everything in this world is little because it is a world made of littleness. And the strange belief that littleness can content you, when you strive for anything in this world in the belief that it will bring you peace, you are belittling yourself and blinding yourself to glory. Littleness and glory are the choices open to your striving and your vigilance. You will always choose one at the expense of the other. And so Jesus is saying, do not choose littleness. And we talk about littleness, how we learned very early on how to be small in school, how to have to ask permission to do simple things. We learned how to be littleness, how to be small. And Jesus is saying, when we offer littleness, we are basically sacrificing our magnitude and response. So, so why are we talking about littleness? When we give pity to another, we are giving them littleness. We're not giving them the magnitude of who they are. We're giving them littleness. We're cursing them by giving them our pity. On the top of page 308 in A Course in Miracles, it says, neither give littleness nor accept it. To have pity on another is to give littleness. So let's not do this. And if you are going through something and somebody in ignorance is trying to offer you littleness, just say, you know what, I'm good. I'm good. I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I am God and you are too. Don't accept it. So I'm going to go to Conversations with God, book 2, and where Neil asks God a question as far as, okay, how do we be there for people who are less fortunate? So on page 189, it says, so Neil says, okay, so Neil says what to do about the less fortunate. And so God says, first, you need to decide who and what you are in relationship to them, to the less fortunate. He says, second, if you decide you wish to experience yourself as being succor or help or love and compassion and caring, then look to see how you can best be those things. And notice that your ability to be those things has nothing to do with what others are being or doing. God continues and says, sometimes the best way to love someone and the most help you can give is to leave them alone or empower them to help themselves. It is like a feast. He says life is a smorgasbord, and you can give them a big helping of themselves. He says, remember that the greatest help you can give a person is to wake them up, to remind them of who they really are. There are many ways to do this. Sometimes with a little bit of help, a push, a shove, a nudge, and sometimes with a decision to let them run their course, follow their path, walk their walk without any interference or intervention from you. He says, all parents know about this choice and agonize over it daily. What you have the opportunity to do for the less fortunate is to remind them, that is, cause them to be of a new mind about themselves. And you too have to be of a new mind about them. For if you see them as unfortunate, they will too, right? Jesus' great gift. So now he talks about, how Jesus dealt with people. And this is very eye-opening what he says. He says, Jesus' great gift was that he saw everyone as who they truly are. He refused to accept appearances. He refused to believe what others believed of themselves. He always had a higher thought, and he always invited others to it. Yet he also honored where others chose to be. He did not require them to accept his higher idea. He merely held it out as an invitation. He dealt too with compassion. And if others chose to see themselves as beings needing assistance, he did not reject them for their faulty assessment, but allowed them to love their reality and lovingly assisted them in playing out their choice. So God is saying, Jesus truly respected the experience that people wanted to have. He says, for Jesus knew that for some, the fastest way to who they are was the path through who they are not. He did not call this an imperfect path and thus condemn it. He didn't do that. Rather, he saw this too as perfect and thus supported everyone in being just who they wanted to be. Anyone, therefore, who asked Jesus for help received it. He denied no one, but was always careful to see that the help he gave supported a person's full and honest desire. If others genuinely sought enlightenment, honestly expressing readiness to move to the next level, Jesus gave them the strength, the courage, the wisdom to do so. He held himself out, and rightly so, as an example and encourage people, if they could do nothing else, to have faith in him. He would not, he said, lead them astray. Many did put their faith in him, and to this day he helps those who call upon his name. Ergo, we're reading A Course in Miracles and other ways he's reaching out to us. For his soul is committed to waking up those who seek to be fully awake and fully alive in me. And God continues, he says, yet Christ had mercy on those who did not. He therefore rejected self-righteousness. He rejected self-righteousness, and as does his Father in heaven, made no judgments ever. Jesus's idea of perfect love was to grant all persons exactly the help they requested, after telling them the kind of help they could get. He never refused to help anyone, and least of all would he do so out of a thought that you made your bed, now lie in it. Jesus knew that if he gave people the help they asked for, rather than merely the help he wanted to give, that he was empowering them at the level at which they were ready to receive empowerment. This is the way of all great masters, those who have walked your planet in the past and those who are walking it now. And so Neil says, now I'm confused. He says, when is it disempowering to offer help? When does it work against rather than for another's growth? And God says, when your help is offered in such a way that it creates continued dependence rather than rapid independence. When you allow another, in the name of compassion, to begin to rely on you rather than rely on themselves, that is not compassion. He says that is compulsion. You have a power compulsion because that sort of helping is really power tripping. He says, now this distinction can be very subtle here. And sometimes you don't even know you are power tripping. You really believe you are simply doing your best to help another. Yet be careful that you're not simply seeking to create your own self-worth. For to the extent that you allow other persons to make you responsible for them, to that extent you have allowed them to make you powerful. And that, of course, makes you feel worthy. Yet this kind of help is an aphrodisiac, which seduces the weak. He says the goal is to help the weak grow strong, not to let weak become weaker. And so we've heard this continued theme from God more and more, where he's saying your goal is not to make folks dependent on you, but to empower them to be independent. And in that circumstance is when you actually, your help, quote unquote, becomes damaging, right? Because that person then starts seeing you as their God, their strength, their whatever. And God has breathed life in all of us. We all share that energy, that God, those godlike qualities from our source. So God is saying to have true empathy is to see another as a divine being of light that they truly are, and not the circumstances that they are in. And many times, the best way to help someone is to allow them to go through their path, to go through their bumps, to fall down and get back up. I have personally had to learn this as a parent, and I have learned this very recently. As parents, we want to pick our kids up and catch them before they fall. It pains us to see them struggle. But I've I've recently learned that is not, it's not helpful at all. That form of help is actually damaging, and that through the problem is where the solution lies. It's through that challenge that they get in alignment with their God self. If the challenge is always being removed, they never get to realize the truth of who they are. I think about Elisa, this woman whose son, committed suicide. If she had accepted the littleness, the pity that others had offered her, and I know it was offered, right? If she had accepted that while she was going through her grief of her son's suicide, if she had started self-medicating, or if she had just fell into this deep hole of depression, and never allowed the light in, then she would have never been able to truly step into her life's mission of loving herself and others. This woman and her son are reaching so many people that others just would not be able to reach. There are some people who resonate with this young man. They feel as if he's relatable to them, that other beings of light on the other side could not reach. And so by her engaging with her son and allowing others to be a part of that experience, she's opened so many people up to the truth of what we all are, that we have so much depth, so many layers of who we are. There's so much more to our experience other than the bodies that we carry, that there is a home that we have left in order to participate in this illusion. And it's just made it so exciting for so many different people. Her site is awesome, y'all. Like, I love it. They just interviewed Bernie Madoff, just to hear his whole. I don't know if you guys are familiar. That's the guy who had like the Ponzi scheme. Anyway, I love the site. So let's remember the incredible opportunity that people have when they're facing hard times. How do we respond when people are going through things? Like Jesus said, just sit quiet and allow the Holy Spirit to come through you. The Holy Spirit will give you the right way to be there for others in the situation that they're in. I know what not to do. Do not feel sorry for others. See them as the godlike being that they are. Know that they have the energy of the solution within them, that they will not be in that situation if they did not have the ability to transform it into a strength. They wouldn't be facing it if they did not have that ability within them. They are able to transmute it into something else, and that transmute that weakness into a strength. So when we do that, when we go through the process of going through a challenge, y'all, we're able to bless others with what we learn. We get wisdom from that. We get experience. We get compassion because we've been through it, and we're able to relate to others. I mean, there's so many beautiful things that we get in exchange to challenges. And we've been conditioned to see them as negatives and just something to overcome. Let me overcome this quick so I can move on with my life. But it's in that challenge that we just are able to transform into something so much brighter than what we ever thought we could be. So that is the lesson for tonight. Are there any impressions, comments, anything? Hey, Kevin.
I'll say something. When you said, when you had talked about not feeling sorry for others, I remember my mother, she was talking about one of her friends had got diagnosed with a serious form of prostate cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And she just kept moping. She was so sad, like, oh, I'm so bad. I feel so bad for him. And I had to tell her, like, look, mommy, everybody else around him is going to look at him that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, like, what's a funny time? Give me a funny memory that you remember him by.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she thought of a funny time and started cracking up. And I said, when you think of him in that way, because you might be the only person that's giving him that positive energy.
Wow.
You know, so this lesson has definitely resonated for me.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Rick. And by saying that, what is a funny time in her, by you encouraging her to think of a funny time, what you did is you asked her to invite a previous moment into the present moment that actually raised her vibration. And that is an incredible, effective use of time. I love that. I love that. Yes, yes, yes. That's awesome. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to share? So now we know what empathy looks like, you know, and we'll trust that everyone who has the Holy Spirit the Holy Spirit will just lead you into that space of knowing how to be there for somebody. And sometimes being there for somebody is just sitting quietly with them, you know, out of respect, like, I'm here for you. That's it. You know, not trying to fix it, and not expressing all this pity and just being there for someone in a time of darkness. But yes, true empathy. He has a whole chapter on that, y'all. So if y'all want to do some more research on empathy, it's on chapter 16 of A Course in Miracles. So that's all I have for tonight.